Welcome to FUNC YOU UP, the podcast that gives you the best of functional medicine, nutrition, and wellness in 8 minutes or less.
Hello, everyone. This is Michelle Miller, clinical nutritionist. Welcome to FUNC YOU UP.
And I'm Samantha Wineke, functional medicine health coach.
And I'm Diana Orchant, functional medicine RD2B.
The gang's all here. We need you to buckle up, hang on tight. We are riled up and fired up on today's topic. So this is part 2. If you didn't catch our last episode, go back and check it out. We talked about marketing myths and labeling lies and the marketing ploys that we're seeing in the food industry now. And at the end, we posed this question of how did we get where we are now, where we have these common understandings of, orange juice is our vitamin C source when we get sick. Why do we believe these certain things? So to really understand how these marketing pushes have come about, we need to first understand who's making these calls. So Diana, break down the USDA, what this is and what they do.
Yeah, so the USDA, also known as the U.S. Department of Agriculture, they have a mission that is twofold. One is to promote agribusiness, so the business of our agriculture, and the second one is to serve the health of the public via the creation of healthy diet guidelines.
So this is a little bit of a red flag for me. I don't know about you.
How are you getting that?
So it's this idea that the people who are responsible for food business, agricultural business, are making the calls on public health. Am I right in saying that?
You could call it a slight conflict of interest.
Okay, and so the USDA is also the organization that's responsible for the food pyramid, which has now been transformed into My Plate. You might be familiar with these guidelines, like they were in your cafeteria growing up in school, and it's updated every 5 years. But they are the ones that are basically telling the general public. This is where the general public is getting their information on what and how much to be consuming.
Right? Like having 3 glasses of milk per day.
I love it. Yeah, so exactly. One recommendation is, 2 to 3 glasses?
Yep, 2 to 3 glasses of milk per day.
And so I guess the question is, why would that be recommended? What are we looking to get out of that milk?
So mainly this recommendation of 2 to 3 glasses of milk a day comes from the idea that that's the primary source where we can get our calcium and also where we can get our vitamin D.
We need strong bones.
Right? Got milk?
Got our milk mustache on.
Right. So think about all of these things. I mean, these are the common household beliefs of why we need to drink milk. We need strong bones. We need calcium. Can you lay some real nutrition truth on me, Diana?
Yeah, so while you may think that milk is the best way to get your calcium, there's actually a lot of great vegetables out there, like leafy green vegetables have a lot of calcium, broccoli, and even foods like tahini, which is basically just sesame seeds.
So these are more bioavailable sources of calcium, which basically just means your body can absorb it more efficiently. And they are richer sources of this mineral.
Absolutely. And did you know that our milk doesn't actually have vitamin D in it?
It's fortified. Which is interesting. So talk to me a little bit about the vitamin D and then the milk.
So it turns out per about half a cup of milk, it's only allowed to be fortified with about 34 IUs of vitamin D.
Which, that might not mean anything to anyone out there, but I mean, when we're supplementing, even in most multivitamins, you're going to see a minimum of like 400 IUs at the very least of vitamin D. IUs is the international units. That's the measurement of vitamin D. I have very low levels of vitamin D. My doctor's always telling me that level, like my level is low in blood work. I'm taking 5,000 IUs of vitamin D. Just to put that into perspective, this isn't the rich source that we think it is.
That would mean, Michelle, that 1 glass of milk for you would give you less than 2% of the vitamin D that you need.
Sounds really efficient. So, okay, back this up into how milk even made its way into the My Plate recommendation.
So what this boils down to is that the USDA Dietary Guidelines Committee is actually made up of a lot of individuals who are either funded by or have really close ties to the meat and dairy boards.
Are you kidding me?
No, I really wish I was.
It's all starting to make sense.
So Okay, so there are these groups that have interest in making money for certain foods, certain food industries, and they are influencing the recommendations that the general population is getting on how often those foods should be consumed.
Now that explains your 2 to 3 glasses of milk a day.
Sure does.
But what about like these government funded, subsidy crops and things like that? How does this work into all this?
Sure. So there are certain commodity crops. Those mean that they've been subsidized by the government. And some of the main ones are corn, wheat, and soy. So if you've been listening to us for a while, you might have heard us talk about these. If not, you can kind of back up and maybe later watch episode 5, which is on the top 5 inflammatory foods. Those are 3 out of the 5. Or you can look at episode 16 that talks about soy and episode 19 on corn. We're really, we're passionate about these foods. So you can hear a lot of information that we have on why we're not huge proponents of consuming those foods. But what usually comes from the corn, the wheat, and the soy is high fructose corn syrup, which we've talked about a lot, white flours, refined flours, and refined soybean oil.
Yeah, so you're telling me that the government is giving a majority of its money to these food industries that are producing corn, wheat, and soy.
Yeah, and actually 56% of the calories that we consume come from these 3 main commodity crops. So more than half of what we consume is coming from the corn, the wheat, or the soy crop.
So what about like our favorite foods, like fruits and veggies? Where does that fall into all of this?
Sure, yeah. So those are considered specialty crops. And only 1% of the government's subsidies go to those.
So is that why it's so expensive to eat healthy and why you can get a $1 menu burger?
Yeah, it's kind of wild, right? They're recommending 5 to 9 servings of vegetables per day. They're actually saying that in their recommendations. But the price of vegetables have gone up 40% since the 70s. And then also the cost of Coke has gone down by 40%. So it's a little confusing.
So it's basically like you got to pay for your health now or you'll pay for it later.
Yep, you got it.
This is a lot. It's a lot to take in.
I know.
So
we're throwing a lot at you guys right now.
A lot of revelations happening for you people out there. So now that we've broken this all down and we've completely depressed you, so we want to give you some actionable steps on how do we go about handling this. I think it's important to say that there is power in numbers, and we have the power to show what's important to us in what we're purchasing and what we're spending our time and money doing. And so talk to me a little bit about how we can vote for the type of food we want through how we're purchasing and where we're purchasing these foods from.
Sure. So some of my favorite ways to make sure that I am supporting local farmers, in fact, is to go to a farmer's market and buy my vegetables there. And I think it's also important to note there, I know we talk so often about organic fruits and vegetables, and I truly believe that. But then you also have to note that a lot of small farmers can't afford having someone afford all of the costs of being labeled USDA organic. So you can talk to the farmer and make sure that it's been organically grown.
Get to know their practices.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you can always just be like, was this crop sprayed? That's a really simple question, and they'll usually give you a straight up answer.
They'll want to tell you. They'll be proud to tell you what it was sprayed with. They'll want to explain why they're choosing to use certain products or certain natural herbicides versus like a common pesticide. I love that.
Also, did you guys know that now there's food stamps that can be used at the farmer's market?
That's incredible.
Very important. Tell me about some of the other community groups that we can get involved with if we're looking to purchase some of these healthier foods.
So you can join a local co-op. I know, Samantha, you used to do that.
Mm-hmm.
You can join a CSA, which is a community-supported agriculture box, where it could get sent to your doorstep every week.
I love that one. And then something similar to that is, I also know you can get CSAs through like something like Fresh Direct. You can actually order those to be delivered weekly. I used to use Misfit Market, which is really cool. It's basically like a ugly fruit and vegetables that they deliver to your door. So traditionally they'd be thrown away. So you're helping twofold. You're gaining access to local fruit and vegetables that are less expensive, but then also you're helping reduce food waste.
I love that. So it's maybe a vegetable that had a blemish on it, that it wasn't pretty enough to be sold at Whole Foods, for example, but it's still perfectly good vegetable. And I think also like real grassroots movement. I mean, grow anything that you can and that you have access to. I think also I love when I see stories of neighborhoods coming together and everybody takes a different food and is responsible for growing that. And then together that neighborhood is able to share the different foods that they're growing.
On a smaller scale too, if you're in a big city, there are a lot of community gardens you can join. And if you don't know how to garden, it's such a great community. You can ask someone to help you out and you can share your different foods from your crops there. But there are ways to make it work.
I love that.
You can also grow little herbs in your apartment window.
I love doing that, yeah.
Everybody can do something.
If you're as fired up as we are on this topic, feel free to reach out to us on Instagram or send us an email at funkyouup@physiologicnyc.com.
Thanks for joining us.
You've been listening to Funk You Up. Be sure to like, review, and subscribe for more daily tips on living well.